The crew has said, Randy, you haven't been out in your shop giving any more marriage advice or telling any more shop stories, and it's time you go do one. I said, well, what do you guys have in mind? They said, oh, that funny story you always talk about of you and your father-in-law down there where he lived outside of Vegas, and how it was almost the end of your marriage, and how that became the pivot point of where you got so much hunting opportunity and your kitchen pass, as we call it at my house. How I almost ended up with an unlimited kitchen pass for hunting and a huge tolerance of budgets for hunting. And I replied back to the crew, I'm like, well, I don't know if people are going to think that's funny, because that's like a 2-hour story. And they all said, no, if you tell it right, we promise you, it's going to be good. So this story is about marriage advice. It's about in-laws. It's about young marriages struggling to get through those times where you just wonder if you're going to make it. It's also about how, if you play your cards right and you swallow hard when you're inclined to speak out, and you have every justification to speak out, but you swallow your tongue, bite your tongue, you might end up with a huge dividend after it's all said and done. And you might be wondering what this U-Haul box is next to me here that has my mother-in-law's name, and then it's got the number 42 and my name on it. I have no idea what's in here. But we're going to find out at the end of this, because this U-Haul box started in Pennsylvania, ended up in Bozeman, Montana for 10 or 11 years, and you'll hear through this story how it ended up in Sandy Valley, Nevada, which is southwest of Vegas, about 45 miles. And how it ended up back here is another mystery. I don't know if we'll even get into that. But so this story started, I believe, in 1995 with a phone call. So my wife and I are heading out to go walleye fishing. It's about this time of year. And if ever your spouse takes a phone call and starts whispering and walks around the corner into another room, that should be your first sign that something's about ready to go snare wire. You are about ready to be drawn into something that is not in your best interest, and surely is not something you had on your schedule for the next week. So I got the boat packed. My son Matthew, he's loaded up, and we're ready to go. I hear my wife whispering, and my father-in-law did not believe in calling anyone himself. That's what Nancy, my wonderful mother-in-law, was for. He would stand there and tell Nancy what to say. And I can hear this going on. I'm like, this is never good. And I hear Kim, my wife, whispering a few things, and then she's like, okay, which is her way of saying, all right, Dad, you win, which is this obedient child giving in to, in this case, a very demanding father, demanding beyond the point of reasonableness. But I didn't know that until, I got married and was into this for a ways. So she hangs up the phone and she turns to me, and body language is the communication of marriage, okay? If you think English or whatever language is the communication of marriage, I'm here to tell you it's not. After 33 years, I know body language is the true communication of marriage, because here's what my wife does when she hangs up the phone. She comes walking around the corner back into the kitchen entryway where I'm loading up coolers, and she just kind of stares at the floor and does this with her arms, which is sign for things are not well. I'm like, what's up? She said, well, I guess we're not going fishing today. I'm like, yeah, we are. We got everything booked. The truck's loaded. The weather looks great. We're going walleye fishing. She's like, well, we can't. I'm like, what do you mean? We got a 4-day weekend ahead of us here. We got to go. We got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. She's like, well, Dad went back to Pennsylvania after Grandma died, and he said he was cleaning out the house, and he sold the house, so he doesn't have any place to put everything. So it's on a Mayflower van. Fine, not my problem. She said, well, it's on a Mayflower van to Bozeman, Montana. I'm like, what? She says, yeah, it's going to be here in 2 days. It's going to be here on Friday. I'm like, you got to be blanky to me. She's like, no. My first intuition was that this was just a bad nightmare, that somehow this was not really happening to me. But as I saw her lips start to tremble, like she's getting ready to cry, I'm like, all right, Randy, you be the good son-in-law, be the good husband. So I said, all right, go tell Matthew, hey, we're not going fishing this week. Let's unpack everything. I got to head out. I have west of Bozeman here. There's a place called Abba Storage. So I go out there and I ask the guy, I'm like, hey, you got a rental that I can get on short notice? He's like, oh, yeah, I got one. I said, well, you better give me the biggest one you got. So I sign on for everything and pay up, come home, and I'm pretty curt at this point because I had big fishing plans. And now my demanding, irresponsible father-in-law, Sweet Lou, has messed all that up. But you know what? It's really not my wife's fault. This guy, he just does what he does. I mean, it's classic. He calls you 12 hours before the load of stuff is going to show up at your house. Even though he'd been planning this for 3 months, 12 hours is evident. It's usually enough notice for him. So I get a call. So that's on Wednesday evening. I go do that. Thursday, I'm getting everything ready. And get a call from the moving van guy that afternoon. He says, hey, we're here. Where do we meet you? I said, well, there's this Abba Storage out west of town. I'll meet you there. I'll be there. So I go out there. I don't live that far from there. And pretty soon here comes a Mayflower van pulling in there. And he pulls up and he says, where's your storage? I said, this one right here. He says, just that one? I'm like, well, yeah. He said, this whole truck is yours. I'm like, what? He said, yeah, this is all yours. Huh? He said, oh, and here's the list that the shipper gave me that you need to keep track of. He says, this is the inventory of everything, and every box is numbered, and you da-da-da. Well, he'd given my wife instructions that, hey, when the list shows up, stack it exactly how I say it. So I get to looking at this Mayflower van, and the guy, he says, you're going to need at least 2 of them this big. So I walk down to the Abba office, and the guy's like, yeah, I got another one just 1 unit away. So I end up with 2 of them. I don't know how big they are. I can't remember. They're like 30 feet by, well, however deep they are, 20 feet. I don't know what it was, but it was a big one, maybe 20 by 20. So then the guy informs me. He says, well, we'll help unload, but we don't move it into anything. We're just going to unload it right here. Wow. Okay. It's only like 3 steps to bring it into the storage. Like, nope, we don't do that. And this guy, you got to envision him. So he's from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he looks like, if you saw the movie Godfather and all that, you'd think like this guy was the Mayflower moving guy or the Beacon's truck moving guy or whatever moving company you want to think of for the Corleone family. I mean, he talks like this. He's gruff. He's big, muscled up. Got this, 1974 mustache that he forgot to shave in 1995. And he just told me, well, we don't put it in the storage. And he's like, all right. So we get everything loaded out on the tarmac there. And, as often happens in the Rockies in about, June or July, August, here comes one hell of an afternoon thunderstorm. And I'm trying to get everything in there, and it's not a good scene. So We get most everything off the moving van. And the guy looks at his watch. He says, it's 6 o'clock, we're done. I'm like, well, what about the rest of the stuff? He says, we don't, 6 o'clock, that's it. You're gonna have to put us up in a hotel and, you know, da-da-da. Like, huh? We only got like another 45 minutes of junk to get out of here. Oh, he rolls the roller door down and said, I'll be here in the morning. We'll need cash for all the receipts and everything. Well, I'm like, what the hell do I do now? So I call my partner, my CPA partner, Bill. He has his son, Nate, super great young guy, muscular, strong. I'm looking at this stuff. There's a broken organ. There is the rear axle off a 76 Jeep Wagoneer. There's a broken pump. He was a miner. My sweet Lou thought he was a big shot miner. There's a broken pump that doesn't work with like 4 inches or 4-inch pipe, about 30 big coils of that. Grandma's old lawn furniture. I mean, it is a pile of debris that if I sold it right there that day, I couldn't have paid for the moving van. And I call Nate. I'm like, hey, can you come help me? I'll pay you. He's like, yeah, I'll be out there. So he comes out and we get as much of this stuff in there as we can. And it's just packed to the gills. I mean, it is really, really bad. And I come home that night. My wife knows how bad this is probably going. She didn't dare come out there. I come home, sweating, sunburned. She's like, well, how's it going? I said, you don't want to know. I said, tomorrow they're bringing the rest of the stuff and we don't have room for all of it. I don't know what your dad was thinking, but if ever there was something that needed a fire, it's that storage unit out there. My wife is like, it can't be that bad. I'm like, honey, it is worse than you can imagine. I said, tomorrow morning, we got to go meet the storage guys out there because we didn't get it all unloaded, and at 6 or whatever time, union hours, they just shut her down. They headed into town for, beer and steaks and whatever, and we got to pay for their out-of-pocket expenses. And so I sleep really good that night. I'm wore out. Next morning, we go out there, and my wife is with me. And here comes the Mayflower van, and they pull up there, and I tell them, look, let's just get this stuff unloaded. Let's get you guys on the road because you're probably charging me by the hour. And the guy's got a bunch of receipts, and he hands them to me. I said, she'll pay you. And my wife's like, what do you mean I'm paying them? I said, we couldn't get it all done yesterday, and we got to pay for. So he had all of everything itemized, and my wife's starting to complain. I'm like, look, it's your dad. This is not my problem. I didn't sign up for this. So my wife pays them. They get all of the stuff out of the van. And it was mostly remaining stuff, boxes like this. Well, I roll up the doors on the storage and my wife is like, ugh. And she's like, well, that was Grandma's phonograph. That hasn't worked for, 38 years. And that blue flamingo, she got that from Aunt Ruth. It's all, like, that's what's here, honey. If you have no idea what's in the back there. There's a broken washing machine. There's like an old grinding wheel. I mean, my blood pressure gets up just talking about it today. Anyhow, my wife has her dad's list, and he had instructed that everything gets stacked front to back according to what he says, how he said it. Well, we end up without enough room. So I've got my pickup there, I've got our SUV there, and we load that up and we start taking it to our house. We have an unfinished bedroom down in the basement, which I guess it never occurred to my father-in-law that I might want to use that someday. And as we're loading stuff, I asked my wife, I'm like, well, why us? Your brother lives near Vegas. Your other brother lives in Reno. You got a sister who lives down there. She said, well, Dad said we're the only ones with a house. And so that's why he sent it to us. I'm like, well, your dad lives down there. Why doesn't he run a storage down there? I don't know. So you're probably wondering, well, this makes no sense. This is my father-in-law. And I need to predicate this because I'm kind of talking about my father-in-law. My wife's father-in-law was no gem either. So the marriage advice part of this is, as bad as you might see your in-laws, there's a very good chance your wife's or your spouse's in-laws have their same issues. So don't think that this all happens on one side of the ledger or the other. But anyhow, because my father-in-law thought that we were the stable couple in the family, that we should act as his storage facility, that's what happened. So all these boxes that you see numbered, number 42, blah, 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 whatever. I think the box numbers went almost to 100. It was in the 90s of how many boxes there were. And it just, if I took the least valuable stuff out of this shop that I'm sitting in, my shop right now, it would be worth more than all of his stuff together if I had a garage sale. So roll forward the hands of time to about, I don't know, 2004, I think it was. Something like that. And every so often the phone would ring over the course of this 9 or 10 years. And it would be Abba Dabba. Mr. Newberg, that storage, you're the contact person. No one's paid it for 6 months. I'm like, what? I'll be right there. I mean, I'm a CPA in town. I got, this reputation of good standing. I can't have unpaid bills in my name. So I'd go out there, I'd pay up. My wife would call, why aren't you guys paying the storage? Well, another story of woe. My father-in-law, his profession, he was a professional Keno player, he said. Well, you don't have to think very far about how profitable that is. So it was always someone else's fault for whatever financial calamity struck, and I paid the storage for all this period of time. But here's the worst. This is more injury than having to pay the storage. Is he would call and, well, no, he'd have Nancy, my mother-in-law, call, and my wife would answer the phone. And again, she'd walk around behind the corner there and whisper, yeah, oh, okay. She'd hang up, come back, she'd say, hey, Dad needs something out of box number 16. I'm like, box number 16 is in the very back on the bottom. I'm not going there to get him his National Geographic magazines from 1972. Well, he really needs it. So trying to be the good son-in-law, the good husband, I would go do this regularly. But there would be times where I would say, no, I am not doing this. And my wife, she knows me well enough, she'd say, well, I guess I got to do it, which is wife speak for, I know you don't want to do it, but if I threaten to do it, you'll go do it. So that's my mechanism of how I get you to go do something you don't want. Smart wife. So she would say that. And my hat would go poof. I mean, it was always the most inopportune time, right? I'm packing to go on an elk hunt, or we're going on a family vacation, and Sweet Lou has Nancy call us, and he needs something in the very back of the storage. So I'd go out there, roll it up, have his little cryptic hieroglyphs of where it is and what stack it's in, and I'd go take everything out of this storage and get box number 16, and then I'd put everything back in there, and I'd bring it back, and my wife would send him whatever he needed. So this goes on for about 9 or 10 years, and I'm pretty sure it was 2004. And as you can imagine, when the phone would ring and it would be Nancy interpreting or being the messenger for Sweet Lou, it just got to the point where I'd leave the house, or I'd be busy, because it's not really good. But, this whole time I'm thinking, hey, I love this woman. She's an amazing person. She's added, took me out of the ditch in my derelict, debaucherous ways, and she's actually straightened me up. I gotta be the guy that stays in and carries a load here. It's not all one way. Well, this summer of 2004, the phone rings, and we're packing for another fishing trip. It's July again. And I hear the whole thing going on. It's in my head, I'm thinking, I have seen how this movie ends. Well, my mother-in-law's birthday is in early August. And we'd planned on going down there for her birthday anyhow. And my wife comes off the phone, comes over to me and says, hey, Dad needs something out of whatever. And this was the time where it took all human restraint for me to be civil, to not go and just burn the storage down. I said, all right. I get on the phone. I call Sandy Valley, Nevada. Naturally, Nancy answers the phone. I'm like, Nancy, put Lou on the phone. She's like, well, he's busy right now. I said, put him on the phone, and I can hear him in the back. And he's got this really high-pitched voice. He's about 5'2", 5'3". And he's got the really high-pitched voice. He's like, you just tell him I'm busy. And I'm like, Nancy, I heard that. You're the messenger. Give Sweet Lou the message. I am loading all of his shit into a U-Haul, and it's going to be in his front lawn when we come down for your birthday in early August. Click. And we went fishing. So my wife is like, how can you do that? That's my dad. I'm like, well, I just did it. Let's go fishing. So my wife, being the wonderful woman she is, she's torn between the fact that now this husband that she loves and her father-in-law have finally reached the impasse. This could be unsolvable. This could be the point of no return. I said, well, let's go fishing. Hell with it. We'll worry about everything else when we get home. So this is where the story gets good. This is where I start earning my keep as a husband. I go down to the U-Haul Center up here on North 7th Avenue in Bozeman, and I tell the guy, look, I am hauling the biggest pile of debris and junk and trash you've ever seen, and I'm hauling it to Vegas. So I need a truck that I can rely on. Well, you got to remember in 1990, well, I guess it's 2004 or whatever, these aren't real, the fleet hadn't been upgraded to state-of-the-art stuff. So I give him my deposit, pay for everything, and get the contract ready for me to show up a couple days later. So I go down there, I get it, and he's like, boy, we just polished her up, shined her up. Boy, she's a runner. I still remember him saying that. She's a runner. And I'm like, AC work? Oh yeah, everything. You got her. I'm like, well, it's got 186,000 miles on it. Oh, these things, they're good for 500,000 miles. We're just getting her broke in. Okay, all right. What do I know? I'm not in the U-Haul business. I'll take the guy's word for it. So I drive it out to Abba Dabba and I start loading stuff. And little does my wife know how much junk I threw out, because I'm calculating a 24-foot motorhome or U-Haul is only going to hold so much of this guy's garbage. And we had shipped and mailed a lot of it back down to him there over the course of 9 or 10 years. So the dumpster, I just like throw it. And if he questioned me, I was going to lie to him. Lou, it didn't make it to Montana. I don't know what the hell you're talking about, box number 70. There was no box 70, So that was my plan. And again, I got to hire Nate to come help me. And we get everything loaded. I mean, this thing is, you couldn't have fit, I'm trying to think if you could fit a roll of toilet paper in there. Probably not. So I drive home, I tell my wife, I'm like, look, we got to get rolling early in the morning because in August, it's hot. I don't want to be going through that Salt Lake mess, which my friend who lives down there, he's an LDS, a Mormon. He calls the drive from Ogden down to American Fork, he calls it the Mormon 500 is what he calls it. And as fast as people drive there, anyone who's driven through there, you know what he's referring to. Well, I told my wife, I want to get through there before rush hour. Oh yeah. So to her credit, she's got the brand new Honda Pilot all loaded up. Matthew's loaded up. Our clothes and everything are in there. And whew, we're heading out of town, boy. We are on a roll. Well, you get out to west of Bozeman, 30 some miles. You get to Norris and you hang a left and you're going and you got a hill there. Well, I know the Norris Hill's not that big, but I better give her the onion a little bit. So I'm just like standing on it. And this thing, you know, these old ones don't have power steering, so you got to have good anticipation. You see a corner coming, you know, you got to start tractor wheeling that thing about, I don't know, 400 or 500 yards before you get there, and then you let go, spins back around like that. And so I'm bobbing and weaving and rolling side to side, and I start going up the hill, and I was going 60 when I hit the hill. I get to the top, I'm doing like 20, and all the gauges are going, I'm like, oh no, I got to go to Vegas in this thing. I'm only 45 miles from town. Get up to the top, start rolling down the other side. Well, with that heavy load, you really get rolling down the backside. And that's when my old days of driving my dad's logging gear and his trucks and stuff came in really handy, because those of you who've never driven those big old things, you know, it's not like this where you got your upright steering wheel. This is like, no, you're doing this stuff. It's like, you know, pizza dough that you're working or something. And you get down to the bottom of the Norris Hill and there's a hard curve to the left. And I'm starting to apply some binders here. Boy, I'm putting the brakes on and I'm not slowing down much. I slam her down into a low gear and come around the corner. I'm like, boy, I better not do that again. So, you know, in August, it starts getting pretty damn hot. And I can grab in the air conditioner. I'm like, it ain't working. Just fan blowing. Well, the guy promised me at the U-Haul, he said, oh, it just takes a while for the compressor to really, once she gets going, you're going to have to put your parka on, he said. Yeah, I'm here to tell you, it wasn't working. I had to roll my window down. You got to be kidding me. Here I am in August driving a 24-foot battleship full of garbage. I'm like, if your trash man delivered to you instead of collected from you, that's what this is. I feel like I'm delivering trash to somebody. Anyhow, it's just what I'm stuck with. So we get rolling and we stop and get gas, you know, every, I don't know, 100 miles, because this 80-gallon tank, you're getting about 1.25 miles a gallon, so you got to gas up regularly. And we make it through Malad Summit down there south of Pocatello. We're actually making pretty good time. I'm thinking, you know, other than the fact that I can only drive like 45, 50 if I have even the slightest incline. So I'm way behind schedule. Well, I'd kind of hoped that Salt Lake was done with all their destruction of their roads when the Winter Olympics were over, but I think that just gave them incentive to tear up more roads. So if you drove, even if you drive through the Wasatch Front today, it's a perpetual state of repair. So we get into Ogden, it's starting to get a little bit busy, and I look off in the distance and I can see this big afternoon thunderstorm coming. I go, oh, boy, I hope that doesn't hit. You know, and now we're like 4 abreast, jockeying and jostling and moving, and all of a sudden I can see up in front of me, I can see a wall of water coming from the heavens. And I'm like, well, this is going to be interesting. And it hits, you know, first couple sprinkles, and then it's just, well, these old U-Haul trucks, it's like a flat windshield, and it's just poof, poof, poof. I can't see hardly anything, so I'm over here jostling with the windshield wiper thing, and I'm not getting anything. Like, what the? And now it's raining so hard, I can't see anyone in front of me. I can see beside me, that's it. And I can see in my rearview mirror, but I can't, like, nothing. And I can't do anything, so I'm like, I'm gonna kill somebody. So I just put my blinker on, and I start easing over. and no one will let me over. And finally, my wife, she sees something's going on, so she gets over in this lane with the pilot, and she slows down and plugs up the traffic enough that in the mirror I can see to get over. And I get over, but I can't see anything in front of me. It's so bad. I keep my blinker on, and I'm kind of driving by feel. You know the rumble strip over there? And I'm doing that, and finally, I think I see an exit. Hopefully I didn't kill anybody. Pull off, go over to under the interstate over there, there's a Flying J truck stop. And my wife is like, what the hell is that all about? I'm like, the windshield wipers don't work. She's like, what? I'm like, I can't get them to work. So I'm over there messing with them after I get the truck filled up with gas, and I'm like, well, I better pull the fuse panel. Pull it out, broken fuse. Walk into the Flying J. Hey, you got any of these 10 amp fuses? Oh yeah, they got them by the 100. Turn it on, hit the thing, and boom, blew the fuse. Well, I'm over there trying to find what's going on, and there's this old boy, truck driver there. He hears a pretty good streak of words coming from me. He comes over, he's like, son, what's the matter? I said, I don't know what's blowing the fuse in this, but I just about killed half the people in Ogden here in this thunderstorm. Windshield wipers ain't working. And he's just like, well, let me take a look. He's playing with the fuses. He takes one fuse out and puts it into the windshield wiper slot, and he's like, give her hell now. Boom! So we're just upgrading the fuse, the amps, and blowing them. He's like, just a second, I got a big fuse. He goes over to his truck, digs out a box full of stuff. It looked like a tackle box. I don't know, maybe if you're a truck driver, you carry a tackle box full of fuses and other stuff, but he plugs it in there, and boom! Like, well, I'm pretty sure you got a bad short. He said, I could put something in here that would go solid, but you might burn the truck down. I'm like, well, let's talk about that. Maybe that's a better option. You know, you aren't gonna, it's not gonna take a lot to talk me into that. Well, better judgment prevails, and I go in, I replace the fuses we blew in our little experiment, and now the afternoon thunderstorm has passed, and now it's like 10 to 5, and it's rush hour. So we get going, merge onto traffic, and if you've ever driven through Salt Lake City in rush hour, you know what I'm talking about. But you probably did it in your car or your truck, not a 24-foot U-Haul that's like the Starship Enterprise or something. I mean, you move the wheel and nothing really even happens. It's just got like a full 180-degree rotation before it even starts to bob and weave. And the other part is, you know, I'm a polite guy and I don't want to kill the guy in front of me, so I'm always leaving a gap there. Like, if I got to hit the brakes on this thing, well, every time I leave a gap, someone pulls in there. So I create another gap, someone pulls in there. And I can tell my wife's getting frustrated because she's like 48 cars out in front of me wondering what the hell's going on here. So we get through that mess. I'm just wringing wet. We get to just south of Salt Lake there where the Cabela's store is. And usually I'd stop at a Cabela's store. My wife's like, oh, you want to go and take a break? I'm like, no, let's get the hell out of here. We got to get to Cedar City. We got a hotel tonight. So we get flying down the road again. I know I got a couple more of these passes I got to go over, and I'm a little bit fidgety. But we make it through those high spots, and then we stop, I think it was in Beaver, Utah. Just, you know, I think it's 80 or 90 miles before Cedar City where our hotel was. And it's getting dark. And I gas up and we grab a quick snack and I ease onto I-15 and my wife's behind me and I pull the light switch. I'm like, what the hell's going on? I can't hardly see anything. So I drive a ways and it's getting darker and darker and it's getting harder and harder to see. The dashboards are lit up, so I know the lights are working. And so I got to check this out. I'm going to hurt somebody. So I pull over, my wife pulls behind me, and I walk up to the front of the truck and I look. And my iPhone puts out more candle power than what those headlamps were putting out. And my wife walks up there, she's like, oh my gosh, put them on bright, see what happens. So I jump in, I put it on bright, so they don't even work on bright. So if I taped a flashlight or a cell phone to the front of this truck, I would have had more candle power than this thing had. So the last hour and a half to Cedar City, my wife had to lead the way with me driving really, really close to her and hoping she didn't stop for anything because I couldn't have stopped in time. So we get to Cedar City, we check into the hotel. It's like just brutal, brutal hot. I'm so exhausted I can hardly stand it. I'm a square-headed Finlander from northern Minnesota. This heat in August, even here in Montana, is more than I can deal with. So we get up the next morning. My wife, she's really worried about me. She can tell I am not in a good mood. And I know what's bothering her. She knows that in the next 12 hours, I will be face to face with her father. And my ability to be congenial, to be pleasant, understanding, she knows those have probably, my portfolio no longer includes those traits. So we get out of Cedar City, we get rolling down into St. George, and there's that grade coming up there out of that canyon by Pine Valley up into St. George, and it's already overheating, and it's so hot. I got the window rolled down. I don't have any AC. I told my wife, I said, honey, I don't know if I can do this. Let's just call your dad and tell him to come and get his junk pile here in St. George. I'll turn in the U-Haul right here. And she's like, oh, no, we're almost there. All right. So if you've ever left St. George and you went through the Virgin River Canyon to Mesquite, some really strange things will enter your mind if you are driving a 24-foot U-Haul full of your father-in-law's least valuable possessions. And it's just like, shoo, shoo, shoo. And what's entering my head, and this is back when I was an engineering major, I took a lot of physics. I'm thinking about this. Okay, going 30 miles an hour, the coefficient of friction of my skin against asphalt. How much damage would that cause? And am I going fast enough to know for sure the U-Haul and all of the pile of stuff would make it over the rail down into the bottom of the Virgin River Canyon? I seriously thought about how could I bail out and just let her go. But then I thought, what if it goes across the meridian and kills somebody? I couldn't live with that. So get through the canyon and get to Mesquite, and it is hot. I mean, it's the kind of hot you expect in Vegas in August. And now it's probably 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just giving it all I can, and the red line and the heat gauge, the transmission temperature, everything is just bouncing back and forth. I'm like, oh gosh. So just before Vegas, out where the Speedway is, there's a gas station. Stopped there, got some gas. This was all desert at the time. Now it's all grown up and developed. And I told my wife, I said, we got to get through this mess. When you get to the spaghetti bowl where 395, the 215, I-15, all that comes in, if you've been there, you know what a mess it is. So we just give her hell. I'm like, get out of my way. I don't care who's in my way or whatever. My tolerance for people expecting me to accommodate them is really low. This is my lane. This is how fast I'm going. And if you don't like it, there's 4 other lanes on each side of me. You just go. So if you've ever been to Jean, Nevada, which is about 30 miles south of Vegas, you get there, there were 2 casinos. I think there's a prison or a women's prison there. Well, you got to hang a right to get to Sandy Valley, and it's a mining road that goes up over this pass, which I don't know if it's asphalted. Yeah, it's asphalted if you want to call it that. But my in-laws live on the other side of that. And I am sweating so bad at this point. I'm just drenched. And I stopped there, pull off the interstate. I told my wife, I said, look, I want you and Matthew to go to the top. And when you see me, I want you to just get the hell out of the way because I'm going. So I creep up there. I mean, I give it gas. You can see the hill coming. I am, as fast as this U-Haul would go, I'm going. And get up there. going 5 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour by the time I get to the top. And I got a string of cars behind me like you can't believe. I've slowed them all down. And you get to the top, and I pull off to the side. My wife was there waiting for me. And I stop, and she comes back. She's like, you can't stop here. Nobody can see. They come up over the hill, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't have any choice, honey. I was going 3 or 4 miles an hour. I was as close to being stopped as I could get. So just do this. You go down there into Sandy Valley and get the hell out of the way, because I don't know if this thing's going to make it. I mean, if you've ever been that road, it's not what you want to take a fully loaded 1968 U-Haul down. And I start down it. And these same thoughts of the Virgin River Canyon are going through my head. That if I jump out, this big pile of shit could just crash here in the ditch. I'm only 8 miles from my father-in-law. He can come and get it. I've got insurance. I bought insurance on the U-Haul. Hell with it. But, being the good upstanding citizen, I decided, no, you're not going to do that. And when that road straightens out as you kind of get towards the bottom, and I just let her go. And man, I was smoking. It's a good thing nobody pulled out in front of me or anything. But anyhow, follow the labyrinth and maze to get to where my in-laws live, and we show up there. And my father-in-law, being prepared, or at least being warned, I was coming with all of his bucket of junk. He'd built a little shanty, a little lean-to, that maybe 10 feet by 12 feet. And I backed up to it, and I just said, look, folks, I got to go in and have a beer. And I'm allergic to cats, and that's a whole nother story, but they're cat collectors. And I went in there, and I just I got to have a drink of water and a beer. So I did that. And my brother-in-law, Dave, he lives like 4 miles away. He's supposed to meet us there. Well, we're waiting. And he's always somewhere between an hour and a half to 3 hours late. So I told Kim, I said, look, we got to have this U-Haul back in town by, I don't know what time, 7, 8 o'clock. We got to start unloading. Well, if you have ever stood in an aluminum metal truck in August, I think it's August 7th, because my mother-in-law's birthday was the next day. It is beyond insufferable. I am wilting, melting, dehydrating, and no one's there to help. So now I got to load all of this crap. And I'm so mad, I told my father-in-law, I said, Lou, get the hell out of the way. I'm just going to back this thing up and hit the brakes, and all these pumps and axles and transmissions and bullshit that you brought from the junkyard in Pennsylvania, it's just going to fly out the back. No, we can't do that. And he wouldn't get it. He stood right in the way to physically prevent me from doing it. So we end up finally getting it unloaded, and my wife comes out, and she can see this is not good. You can see this is really bad. And I looked at her, said, honey, I love you dearly, but this is above and beyond the call of duty. This is beyond any reasonable thing that someone should have to deal with for this pile of crap. I don't know how the scales are going to get balanced, but I hope you appreciate what I've done here. I was at least smart enough to not say, hey, this is going to cost you an awful lot of hunting and whatever. But that's what was going through my mind. It's like, all right, how can I make this work? How can I feel that I'm at least being rewarded for my beyond protocol of being a son-in-law? So get everything done, take the U-Haul into Vegas, and I'm mad because, no headlights that really work, and the windshield wipers don't work, there's a short, blows out the fuse. Air conditioner doesn't work, I want my money back. And I'm arguing with the guy, and he's like, well, it can't be that bad. Go in here and, take this sheet in there. So I go in there, and I kind of signing and authorizing or whatever, and the guy who had checked in the truck comes walking in, and he says, anybody got a bomb? The clerks behind the counter are like, what? He says, the truck that guy just brought in needs a bomb. We cannot rent that truck to anybody else. I'm like, oh, I told you so. So I'm thinking life is going to get better. And this is, you're probably thinking at this point, come on, Newberg, you're making this up. Well, I'm not creative enough to make up all of this story and the next part of it. So we go to our hotel that night, and I sleep really, really well. I mean, I am crashed. I'm thinking, okay, the worst calamity of my adult life, the most stressful part of my marriage is now in the rearview mirror. I made it. My marriage has survived. So my wife says, Mom and Dad want us to come out and visit this morning, and then we're going to go to the Main Street station down on Fremont Street, and we're going to take her and all the neighborhood. And the classic thing of my father-in-law was he'd invite you to dinner, and then he'd sit there drinking coffee until you picked up the tab. Finally the waiter or the host would come and say, hey, someone else needs this table, and my father-in-law would look at me like, well, I picked where we went. It's your job to pay. I did not know that's what the protocol was, or the etiquette of when you ask someone, hey, can I take you to dinner? In my family, that implied you intended to pay, but not in his family. So anyhow, we're going to take them to Nancy's birthday dinner that night. So we drive out there. So they live in this 22-foot, 28-foot, I don't know what it was, trailer out in the desert. And if you've ever been to Sandy Valley, envision National Lampoon's Vegas Vacation, where Cousin Eddie lives out in the middle of nowhere. This is kind of the Sandy Valley. And so we go in there, and I hear a lot of talking that I'm not real privy to. It's in a low enough tone that they know I can't hear it. And all of a sudden my wife's like, okay. And she says, hey, I want to talk to you. And when your wife asks you, hey, can we talk outside? That is never a good sign. Refuse that. Reject it. Don't do it. Because here's what happened. We go outside. She said, hey, Mom and Dad don't, I'd really like to buy them some food and stuff. And, would you take Dad into town and you guys go buy some groceries? I'll give you a list. And they got a list and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, honey, we just paid their car insurance, and we just put new tires on their car. I mean, what next? She's like, well, just please, would you? I'm like, all right, for your mother's birthday, I love your mother dearly. I'll do anything for Nancy. So I come in the house. I'm like, hey, Lou, I hear we're going into town to get groceries. And he said, yeah, let's do that. Let me grab the coolers. Well, the coolers, if you live 45 miles from Vegas and you go grocery shopping, you got to put everything in a cooler because it's that far, everything will melt and spoil before you get home. So he's got all these coolers that he uses for grocery shopping. I grab the keys, I jump into my brand new Honda Pilot that's got all of about 5,000 miles on it, fire up, turn on the AC, and I'm waiting for him, and he's throwing his coolers, and he's got like this purple silver colored Ford Contour. I mean, it doesn't look that good, and it doesn't run that good. And I roll my window down. I'm like, hey, Lou, jump in. Put those coolers in here. Let's get going. No, we're going to take my car. No, let's take mine. No, we got to take my car. No. So I walk in the house. I told my wife, I'm like, Kim, he wants to take his car. I ain't doing this in his car. Oh, come on, just humor him. Okay. So we get in his car, and we start driving. And it's pretty hot. It's like 11 in the morning, but it's really hot. And I'm over there fiddling with the air conditioner, spinning the dials and everything. And he's like, what are you doing? I said, I'm hot, Lou. I'm about ready to vapor lock here. I need some AC. Oh, it doesn't work. Hold on, turn around. We're going to get my car. I don't think we got enough gas. And when he said, I don't think we have enough gas, look, oh, now I know why he wanted to take his car. He wants me to gas up his damn car, and that's why we got to take his 1998 Ford Contour piece of crap instead of my brand new, plush, fully air-conditioned Honda Pilot. I'm like, well, turn it around. We'll take our chances. He's like, no. And I'm like, well, what the hell? What do I do now? So we get to the hill there, that big mountain pass, and we start rolling down the other side towards I-15, and we roll into the gas station in Sandy Valley, or Jean. And just before we got in there, I'm sweating so bad, I roll the window down, and he comes completely uncorked, just screaming and yelling at me. And I'm like, what the f-? So we wheel in there, and I'm trying to understand what he's so pissed off about. And I get out, I'm like, Lou, what the hell is the problem? And he has thrown such a tantrum. People are looking like, this guy need to be committed? Do we need to call 911? What the hell's the deal here? Come to find out, his window won't roll back up. It's broke. This can't be. If you dreamt your worst nightmare, you could not come up with this. Well, gas is like $1 more a gallon out there than it is in Vegas. So I'm like, well, put enough in here to get to Vegas and we'll gas up in Vegas. And, you know, running my credit card, I'm just about ready to wear the magnetic strip off it as much as I'm using it whenever I'm around him. So we drive into Vegas, and the sun's over here, and I'm getting all sunburned, I'm getting blasted by wind, and I am not saying a word. I'm like, if I say anything right now, it will be nothing but a streak of expletives, and he will tell my wife that I verbally abused him. So I'm not saying anything. And so here he is, all of 5'2", behind the steering wheel, driving like this. And I'm over there, you know, 6'2" Finlander, looking at him like, this is quite the scene. This is something out of Hollywood. And we get to Sam's Club, somewhere over on, kind of on the southeast side of Vegas. I mean, there's like 14 Sam's Clubs. Why we had to drive way over to that one, I don't know. But this is kind of where I lost it. So we wheel into the parking lot. I'm all sunburned. My hair on this side is all frizzed out. He says, well, you're going to have to stay out here with my car so nobody steals it. You're the one who rolled down the window. I said, Lou, for Christ's sakes, leave the keys in it. Maybe someone will steal this piece of shit while we're in there. Oh, he couldn't believe I insulted his car. I said, Lou, you need 2 of these cars, one to shit on and one to cover it up with. This is the biggest pile of... It would be a blessing if someone stole this from you. And besides that, who's going to pay for all this stuff? That stumped him. He's like, well, all right, let's go. So he just marches in there, just not talking to me, nothing. He grabs a shopping cart, and I'm following along behind him. I'm like, well, at least it's air conditioned in here. I'm not going to die. I'm buying a pop and everything. Boy, I'm sucking her down and just trying to get rehydrated in there. And he walks over. He's like, here. And he runs and gets a second shopping cart. Like, what the hell? Okay. So by the time we get to the counter, there's fillets and shrimp and fine wines and fruit. And I haven't eaten that fine of food in my adult life, but I'm going to be paying for it. So we check out. I can't even remember how much it came to, but it was like 4 months of grocery bills at my house. And out we go, and he's filling his coolers up. And so we drive back, and I'm getting sunburned. And I can't hear out of my right ear because the wind is blasting me so hard. And I have now about 45, 50 minutes to think about what I'm going to do here. How am I going to handle this? How can I recoup this? What is going to happen that I can stay married, that I don't somehow commit a violent act against my father-in-law, that I respect my mother-in-law for all of the love and wisdom that she has provided. So I got a long time to think about this in the drive out there. And what I concluded is it would not be unreasonable for me to tell my wife what's really on my mind in a polite way. So we get there and we pull up. He pops the trunk open. I grab one of the coolers and I come walking in to the cat shelter, also known as my in-laws' house. And my wife looks at me and her eyes get big and she says, "What happened to your hair?" I put the cooler down. I said, "Get me a beer. I can't deal with this anymore." She's just looking at me like, I think he's reached the point. I think this is it. He's either going to die or he's going to hurt somebody. And I sat there drinking the Coors. I still remember sitting there thinking, I'm going to tell this woman what this is going to cost her. So Lou brings in the rest of the coolers. And I told Kim, I said, "Kim, I need to talk to you." So we went and sat out in our air-conditioned Honda Pilot that had 0 miles on it in the time it took me to go to town, fill up my father-in-law's car with gas, buy all of his groceries, get in a fist fight, just about get a sunburn, get my hair all poofed up, and determined that I must really love this woman. And this is where the marriage advice comes in. This is the moral of the story, or the conclusion of how I ended up with the amount of hunting privilege and latitude that I have. I said, "Honey, here's what happened." And I explained to her, she's like, "Oh, I forgot that his air conditioner, yeah, Mom told me the air conditioner was broke in their car." And, "Oh, yeah, Mom told me that the car window, that you got to take the door panel off to roll it back up." And then when I told her, well, the reason he wanted to take that car was because he didn't have enough gas to get into Vegas. He needed to gas up even on the way to Vegas. My wife was trying not to laugh. It was one of those events where it is so funny, so tragic, so disturbing, but so funny that she is snickering. And I said, "Darling, you know that this is not fair. This is so beyond the bounds of reasonableness, so beyond the call of being a son-in-law and a husband, that this is not fair. I just have to get this off my chest, that what you have decided here is that your father and your family is more important than our marriage and our family, because you refuse to tell this guy no." She said, "I'm so sorry. What is it? What can I do to let you understand how much I appreciate the way that you've handled this, and that you did not kill my father when you should have?" And I said, "Well, the hunting budget is going to get a lot bigger. And you know what? If I say I want to go hunting, you are invited. You are welcome to tag along anytime you want. My buddies will stay home and you can come with. But if I want to go hunting, I'm going hunting. And I am never again dealing with another piece of junk, another pile of debris, any requests from your father. If your father ever wants to talk to me again, he can call me and not use your mother as the interpreter. But the odds are I'm going to be hunting where I won't be taking his call." So, if you're wondering how it is that I get to hunt as much as I do, you can go back to that period of time that culminated in 2004 with me just about dying of dehydration and heat stroke and swallowing hard, biting my tongue when I so much wanted to say what was on my mind. So if you're ever in that situation, if your in-laws are imposing on you to some degree, which they will, my in-laws impose on my wife, yours will impose on your spouse, try your best to maintain your composure. And if you have a strong, loving relationship, your spouse will say, darling, what within your wildest dreams would make this up to you? And you can say, an awful lot of hunting would sure make it up for me. So, unfortunately, I probably, so in the thought of all this, as I've been telling this story, there's a twinge of guilt because my father-in-law passed away in 2018. And when he did, I was coming back from Arizona on an elk hunt. And my wife said, hey, you got the cargo trailer with you, right? I'm like, yep, I do. Why? Well, Mom and Brother Dave want to know if you'd stop by and pick up a couple boxes. Sure, I can do that. So I go out to Pahrump, Nevada. And lo and behold, what boxes do I see? Box number 42. A whole bunch of others. This box has not been opened since it left Pennsylvania in 1994 or 1995. And when I picked these up and put them in my cargo trailer, I drove them here to Bozeman, Montana, where in a repeat of my, I guess, high level of accommodation, there are now about 40 of these boxes stored down in the basement of my house. And the crew said, if that's really true, you had to bring one of those boxes for this shop story and open it and see what's in there. So this morning, I went down into the basement. Where's the knife? Let me get my knife. So I went down into the basement where my wife says, there's like a big kind of don't touch this stuff sign. Well, honey, I touched it. This must be where somebody wrote that I was picking this box up. It said cookbooks, but that's been crossed out. It looks like it's been retaped. It says toaster and mugs. And it says box number 42. So this is like almost needing some sort of drum roll or something. I have no idea what's in here, but I have carried this box. Well, it came here on a U-Haul van. It spent 9 or 10 years out here at the Abba Dabba storage. And then it got stored in Vegas. And then it got brought back up here. And it's been stuck in my house over here since 2018 after my father-in-law passed away. So I have no idea what might be in here. The hell is this thing? You know what that is, Jay? Looks like a fondue pot.
I can see that.
And a pizza cutter. Or what is this thing? I don't know. Don't know what that is. A vacuum sealed bag. With a shopping bag in it with some plastic bags with You know what the hell those are? I have no clue. Oh, Nancy's prescription bag. This just gets better as we go here. UNICEF cards. These must. I didn't know. Is UNICEF even still around? They still feeding poor people? I don't know. UNICEF cards. Where's this from? CVS, Las Vegas. They probably don't even have a QR code on that anymore. What do we got here? Oh, more UNICEF cards. More UNICEF cards. More UNICEF cards. Well, that's what was in box 42, folks. And to think I have 20, 30 more of these boxes that I've been responsible for hauling around the country. But here's what you should think about. I know these are down in my basement. And my wife knows it's quite an imposition for me to give up storage space so that all of this stuff that should be tossed in the trash, she knows that, oh, what else is in there? What is that? Oh, a garbage bag. Oh, so my wife knows most of this stuff isn't worth anything, but it takes up a lot of space down where I could be storing stuff. So whenever I feel that my hunting pass is getting a little low, that maybe I've worn out a lot of it and I should recharge my hunting pass, I kind of get on a little bit of a grind about, you know, I'm going to go downstairs and I'm sorting all that stuff your parents shipped up here. I'm sorting that stuff out and I am getting rid of that stuff. I am over that. Oh, come on, Randy, please don't do that. You know, it's really important to Mom, and I promised Dad that we'd keep it for him until something happened to Mom and da-da-da. And I'm like, well, what the hell? Go rent a storage and have your siblings pay for it. I'm not the storage company. And since my wife never watches these videos, really that's all a little bit of an act. Because I know she's feeling bad. It brings back the memories of that time, that August of 2004, when our marriage almost ended. When I almost murdered her father, when a lot of things could have went bad had I not shown so much restraint. And she still carries a big bundle of, what would I say? I don't know if guilt's the right word, but feeling that the ledger still could use some balancing over that. So, that, my friends, is how you have marital harmony. How you get to hunt, fish within outside the bounds of reasonableness. How you can have a hunting budget, a tag application budget that is the envy of all your friends. And in the process, you can have a wonderful marriage to a beautiful, understanding woman who puts up with all that for 33 years. Peace, not justice. Peace.